Good evening, everyone. I hope you can all see my screen there. Welcome to our talk this evening for Saving Devon's Treescapes, talking about the citizen science elements of the project. So we've been working on the project for about 2 years now, but mostly because of COVID, so since last autumn before. So Saving Devon's Treescapes is a project that has come about because of Ash Dieback. So there's we think that there's going to be at least 90% of Devon's ash trees lost over the next few years, which will affect everybody. So this project is run on behalf of Devon Ash Dieback Resilience Forum, so being led by Rosie at Devon Wildlife Trust. And we are looking for some help as well along the way to help us do this project. So we've got a really fantastic partnership that have come together to help this project, and some funding as well. And we are working across Devon, and the aim is to try and plant and nurture 250,000 trees to sort of help boost the trees that we anticipate will be lost through Ash Dieback. The project, as I said, is going to be across Devon, but we're going to be focusing on a few key areas. And so it's Neurotia, which does just slip over into Somerset, but that's in the Black Downs. We've got the Collie Valleys here, Exeter and Cranbrook, around Hall Bay, and right down in the bottom of South Devon there. So we'll be running various things in all of these areas. So an estimated 1.9 million ash trees, that's outside of woodlands in Devon. So that's our hedgerows and the individual trees. So it's not even the ones in the middle of the woodlands, of which there are obviously plenty more for now, but with the potential to lose at least 90%, that's going to make a huge difference. So the project aims to be is aiming to plant small numbers of trees widely across Devon. So rather than planting up big new forests, we're planting individual trees in small groups. So up to a kind of maximum of about 500 trees, but mostly in much smaller numbers. So one of the ways of doing this is using the tree nursery. So there's a tree nursery currently up in North Devon at Meath, and volunteers have been fantastically collecting fruits and processing seeds and planting trees to help us have this stock of native trees which we can start planting. And we're planting lots of different species of native trees to not replace the ash, but hopefully to sort of fill in the gaps that we anticipate they will be leaving. So that's probably the first way that you can get involved if you wish to. So contact Rosie if you wish to get involved with the seed collection and processing that's based in North Devon. As I said, this project's all come about through Ash Dieback. We're not going to go into huge details of Ash Dieback this evening. It's caused by a fungus called Hymenoscyphus fraxineus. Originally it was just it was called cholera, and it's still called cholera to describe the actual disease, because there are various other diebacks. So this is the cholera Ash Dieback. It's a fungus that originated in Asia, and in Asia where the trees have sort of grown up alongside the fungus, it doesn't affect them very much. But it was first discovered in this country not very long ago, only a few years ago. And initially you can see it most obviously in the summer where it affects the leaves. So the leaves, as the name describes, they really die back and go very sort of brown and look very dead even in the middle of summer. Then the fungus works its way into the smaller branches and eventually into the trunk as it sort of takes over the tree more. So you can see here that this sort of twig has been affected, so it's got the buds but no leaves have grown on it, and that will slowly work its way into the main trunk of the tree. There's loads of fantastic resources if you go to the Devon Ash Dieback Resilience Forum, and lots of pictures and how you can identify Ash Dieback if you're worried about it. But it is something that is affecting a vast number of trees in Devon. So with this huge loss of trees and change in our treescapes, there's going to be a knock-on effect on a range of different species. And so there's a few species that we are going to be focusing on throughout this project, and I'm going to be talking about some of them tonight and how you can help us to monitor them. So we'll be covering sort of in brief with all of these, bats and that project, brown hairstreak butterfly, lichens, trees themselves. So we'll be, I'll tell you about that. We'll be monitoring some notable trees. And the aspect that I'm not going to cover this evening is cell buntings, and RSPB are going to be handling that section. They're the experts for cell buntings, so we won't be covering that tonight. And for all of these, we've got a fantastic web-based app that you can record all your findings on, and that's devontreescapes.com. And up there, sorry, it's really small writing the way that I managed to get the screenshots, but we've got home, treescapes, brown hairstreak and lichens. You can add all your data through this app, but it's got all the instructions on there, so please do take a look if you want to get involved in the project. So the first species I'm going to talk about tonight are brown hairstreak butterflies, and these are really quite lovely butterflies. They're quite small, only about 4 centimeters across their wingspan. Males and females, they do differ in size, but only by a couple of millimeters, so not massively notably. And there's some colour changes between the sexes. The females have got this sort of orange, much more orange on the wing than the males. But the problem is that as adults, they're really elusive. So they spend their summer living at the top of ash trees, right in the canopy, so very difficult to spot, unless you maybe if you sit somewhere just at the right tree all day with your binoculars. So at the end of summer, they come down and they lay their eggs on blackthorn. And so that is where we can then survey for them. They're one of a few species of butterfly who lay their eggs and they remain in egg form throughout the winter. So they lay their eggs so early autumn, and I'll show you some photos in a minute. They're small and white on the sort of the dark blackthorn branches, and they stay there throughout winter. They start to develop slightly when they're first laid, and then it's like they press pause and they stay dormant throughout the winter. And then when it starts to sort of come around to spring again, they continue to develop until they're ready to hatch in April or May. They then munch their way through all the new blackthorn shoots and buds, and growing and growing and growing, and they become they make a chrysalis at about June, July, and drop down to the base of the hedge in the leaf litter, which is where they then develop into the butterfly. And then they come out in July, peaking at around August, and then decline again by October as they go back to that cycle of laying their eggs. They are a butterfly that's declined by about 49% since the 1970s, and that's something that Butterfly Conservation have worked out. Their main threat is, well, apart from Ash Dieback, so obviously that hasn't affected them over the last 50 years, but is to do with habitat loss. So obviously Ash Dieback is only going to accentuate that. So things like flailing of hedges, because the key thing is that they lay their eggs on the sort of most recent growth, so only 1 to 2 years. So if you flail your hedge every year, it's likely that you'll just be removing those branches that have got the eggs on. We're quite fortunate here. Devon's a bit of a stronghold for them. So it is possible to find them across quite large areas of Devon, but quite locally common, or common's probably a little bit too strong. So the eggs that we're actually looking for, they're only, I think it's 0.8 millimeters across. And I'm asking, you know, when volunteering, I'm asking you to look in a huge blackthorn hedge And you're saying that's not even a needle in a haystack, that's even smaller than that. But the white egg against the dark trunk, here we go. It's quite visible once you get your eye in, I say, and I promise that it is. They are, as you can see, really small, often have a little sort of dot in the centre, and they're really beautifully pitted. I'm afraid that my camera doesn't do the best job. Here's another one. Can you see this gorgeous sort of pitting on the outside, and really wonderful and really round? Because there are a few other species, particularly of moths, that might lay their eggs on blackthorn that are white, but they don't have this appearance. They're laid usually on their own, so just one by itself, although you can occasionally get a couple together and occasionally a cluster of up to 4 and 5 along the same branch, but usually on their own. And as these two pictures so far have shown, kind of in this part where one new bit of growth meets older bit of growth, or at the base of spines, sort of in the little sort of nook, is where you're most likely to find them. So here's one with my hand to show how tiny it is, but also how well they do actually show up against blackthorn. Although when you're faced with a hedge like that, it is a slightly daunting task to know where to start. So these are, we do have some fantastic blackthorn hedges in Devon. They do really like the ones, obviously, that are not flailed so often, so they have a chance to lay their eggs, for eggs to develop, and to be able to do that year on year. So here is a blackthorn twig, and for those keen eyes amongst you, if you've got a big enough screen, you might be able to see the egg just right in there. So they are tough to find, but we've been running it this year, and excuse me, last year we had a fantastic response. Well, I'm actually going to skip this slide and come back to it. This was last year, so all the yellow ones are where we found brown hair streaks, and the red ones, unfortunately, where we didn't. So really quite widespread, a really great population in East Devon, and so down the A38 corridor to Torbay. Excuse me, I've not been talking enough today, I think. And a few around Exeter, but less so in North Devon and West Devon, and in South, unfortunately. And a big shout out to the Sidmouth Biodiversity Group, who did a fantastic job of surveying pretty much the whole of the Sid Valley, and unfortunately not finding any, so fingers crossed that you might find some this year. So this year we're almost at the end of survey season, so obviously the best time is as soon as they've laid the eggs, but after the leaves have fallen, because obviously it's much harder to spot them. So that tends to be around November, through until sort of into March. But at that point, a lot of the eggs have either been predated or lost, so they're harder to find. And also the earlier you get them, almost the brighter white they are, and the easier they are to see. So we've had a really good talk online that goes into a lot more depth than I'm going into this evening, that's done by Jenny from Butterfly Conservation, and she can talk you through all the different aspects of looking for the butterfly eggs and about the butterflies themselves. As I said, you can go and look and download and upload your results onto the app, and we've got various things that we ask. So for example, sort of where you are, we ask you to survey 100 meters, which should take about 30 minutes of really good blackthorn hedging. And then we ask sort of how many eggs, how tall they are off the ground, how high even, and where they are as well. So if they are in the main body of the hedge, above waist height, because the good thing with these butterflies is they tend to lay their eggs between sort of head height and knee height. So really, really good for searching. Zone B, if it's in the little suckers that sort of come out from the side of the hedge, or zone C, if it's really sort of quite a separate section than the hedge. But that should hopefully all be explained on the app in the recording form. If you need a bit of a hint about where to start looking because you're not sure, please do get in touch. What we're doing this year is so it varies slightly from Jenny's talk. We're sending out maps that show the squares where they have been found. So this, for example, is Exeter. And so that's as a suggestion of where you could maybe just broaden out the search slightly and have a look and see if you can find one in a neighbouring square in good blackthorn habitat. Okay, and searching is fun. Here is Rosie with her first egg that she found up in Mincing Lake in Exeter, which is one of the Devon Wildlife Trust managed Exeter Valley parks. And this is another training session that we held last December. And interestingly, this was, as you can see, a very sort of trimmed, flailed hedge, and we found quite a lot of eggs on it actually. But it was in East Devon where there seems to be quite a high population. So maybe it's because we started with quite a high population of eggs that meant that even on flailed hedgerows we could find them. So you really can look wherever there's a decent amount of blackthorn, and particularly on the south facing side is the key places to look for these small eggs. If you have any questions about any aspect of what I'm saying this evening, please do pop them in the chat and we'll go through questions at the end. But we hope that there's maybe a few more weeks that we can still search. So if you'd like to take part, please do get involved. This is a great winter activity. And I'm going to move on now to lichens. So lichens, again, obviously we know loads of lichens live on trees, and lots really, really like to live on ash trees. They're very under-recorded because lichens are seen as a really specialist bit of knowledge and identification skills, which for many of them, it really is. There are about 1,900 species of lichen in the UK. Some of those are just really rare ones that have only been found a couple of times. And in Devon, we've got about 900 species. And again, some of them will be really rare. And some of them will be quite common. So we have selected a few that hopefully will be sort of easier to identify than some of the others. So first of all, what is a lichen? So a lichen is a biological rather than a taxonomic category. So lichen is actually a dual organism. So it's comprising fungus and either an alga or a sort of bacterium, something that can do the photosynthesizing for the organism. And they live together with the fungus providing the sort of structure of the lichen, and the alga able to photosynthesize, and that's how it gets its energy. So although they live on trees, and you can get trees that are absolutely covered in lichen, they're not taking anything from the tree itself. And of the whole lichen, about 95% of it is that structural element, the fungal element. But they're really very, very interesting organisms. Here got a quick sketch of a really sort of generic lichen with the upper cortex. So that the hyphal layer, that's made from the fungus. And then you can see that within that sort of the top bit here, all these green sort of algal, or the photobionts, the photosynthesizing element will hover there, so it can really catch the light. And then they've got the central section and then the lower cortex, which differs depending on what so the structure of the lichen is. So some of them have a base Others are so sort of rooted to the bark that they have a very different base. But it's a just a generic cross section this at the moment. So about 20% of fungi species are lichenized. That's quite a high proportion. Oh, I think I've mentioned that already, the number of species. So with 900 species in Devon, that is a huge number. And I have to say, quite a few of them look very similar. So to be able to tell one from another, sometimes you have to go to chemical level, and obviously to be able to know the difference between many species takes quite a lot of training and interest, and there are some fantastic specialists that we have in the county, and thank you to all of them for helping me when I was putting together the lichen talk that we have online. They also grow on many surfaces, so the ones that we are interested in this project are of course the ones on trees, but you'll have seen them growing on stones and all sorts of places. They grow very slowly. They're visible all year, although of course when the trees aren't in leaf, it can be a little bit easier to spot them. So this is, the lichen survey is something that can be done all through the year. And again, sort of winter, this time of year is great to do a lichen survey. Now we have three main forms of lichen. So there's crustose lichens. So these are the ones that are really, really sort of smooth and level with the bark. So you can't sort of peel them off or anything. They're really well adhered. And they have sort of a single layer. The central ones are folios, so kind of the leafy lichens. You can see, they've got an upper and a lower surface. So that's something to notice. So these bits here, you can sort of peel them back and you can look at the colour underneath and whether they've got any sort of little sort of rooty bits. I'm trying not to use all the terminology. I do go into some terminology in our longer talk because there is a whole glossary of terms that you can use if you're getting into lichen surveys. And finally, we have these fantastic fruticose lichens. So these include some of the beard lichens that you see that are really bushy and just sort of hang from branches. This is quite a common one, Ramalina farinacea, with these fantastic sort of strap-like branches, quite flattened, and these sort of little discs all the way along the edge that make it sort of quite unmistakable from anything else. And these lichens, oh, my mouse has gone, there we go. These ones have like a double surface, so they're almost what's the word, symmetrical. So although this one's flattened, it'll have sort of almost two upper surfaces. So there's no colour difference, for example, between the two sides, which is what you do get with the foliose lichens, because you get some that look a little bit like these bushy lichens, but when you look closely, they do have a very definite difference to the surfaces, upper and lower. But there is a talk on YouTube that goes into all of this in a lot more detail and covers the, I think it's 12 species that we've picked out for you. So it goes into all the details of how to identify the different species on our list. All the species that we've chosen are ones that are associated with ash. You won't be able to get them confused with another similar species, because some of them are you do get lichens that are very like another one. But these ones, you'll be able to tell them apart just by eye, although generally using a hand lens is really, really useful if you're going to go and do a lichen survey, because some of them are quite small and quite intricate. But we've got that talk that's on YouTube, so please do have a look at that for all the details. Excuse me. So we are doing a bat survey again this year. We ran it at the end of last summer, and this is the Devon Bat Survey, which had a sort of a prior incarnation with the Devon Greater Horseshoe Bat Project, but we're going to continue it and really focus in the areas that Saving Devon's Treescapes is looking at. So those 5 areas on the map that I showed you near the beginning. And this will be coming back in spring. Obviously, all our bats are asleep at the moment. So you'll be able to book a bat detector from your nearest centre. And we have a few centres sort of scattered around. Borrow a detector for 3 to 5 nights and give it back to us, and we'll tell you what you've got. And that data will be added to our database and knowledge of bats in these areas. And so why bats? Bats really need trees in the landscape. So we have 16 species of bat in Devon. That's out of the 17 breeding species that we have in the UK. So we've got a huge variety of bats. They are generally quite under threat, and they will be, you know, with this change of treescapes that we're anticipating. All our bats are insectivorous, so they need those lovely green spaces for insects to sort of live and flock around in the evenings for them to eat. They also use our treescapes and our landscapes, the trees within our landscapes, to get around as well. So bats echolocate. I'm sure that everyone knows that, but they echolocate and they don't like flying across huge areas. So they like to stick to the edges of woodlands or hedgerows, and that really helps them to travel through the landscape. So if we're losing sort of over 1 million trees, then there might be an effect on some of our bat populations. So that's a good reason to be sort of planting more trees as we go, to really help bats. I hope I'm not going too fast through these. We are also asking people to take part in a sort of general tree survey for recording notable trees. So these are particularly sort of larger ones, so more mature, they stand out in the local environment. So much larger ones. It's a lovely oak here. And the aim of this element of the project is that we'll be able to build up a picture of sort of the health of the landscapes. We'll be able to see where those big mature trees are. We're asking for records of all species of tree, but we would really like to sort of highlight ash trees, and particularly any that may be showing signs of resistance to Ash Dieback, because that will help with some ongoing research. Because Ash Dieback hasn't been in the country very long, I think it's only maybe not even a decade, we really don't know yet quite how things are going to go. So we're trying to start really learning and doing our research now before it's too late. However, if you're going to be identifying trees at this time of year, it's a bit tricky because they don't have leaves on. So you might need to brush up on a bit of winter twig ID. We've got ash here. So looking at twigs is really good. And once you start looking closely, you see how different some of the twigs actually are. This is ash with this lovely kind of grey bark and the really gorgeous sort of velvety black buds. And even now at this time of year, you might still find a few ash keys, so that the fruit's still holding on. So they're produced obviously in autumn, but sometimes they don't fall until sort of much later. In the centre here, we've got oak. Oak is quite easy to identify. Personally, I just think that the shape of an oak tree is quite distinctive. But if you look closely, it usually has a cluster of buds at the end of the twig, with these So a lovely sort of bronzy colour and lots of little scales on the bud as well. Another common species that we have all around is beech. And beech trees, particularly if they're hedges or smaller trees, really take a very long time to lose their leaves, although I expect they'll all be gone now because the new buds will be starting to push through. And these have these fantastic long pointed buds that stick out at an angle away from the branch. So you can see just between these three species, the variety that you get between different twigs on our trees. So you don't necessarily need leaves to be able to identify one tree species from another. We've got lots of resources within Devon Wildlife Trust on how to identify different tree species. There's plenty of resources out there. And again, recording these notable trees, you can do that on the app. All that data feeds into DBRC, and then we'll be able to build that up over the course of the project and really see how things are changing with all these different species, with the brown hairstreaks, with the lichens, which we're really interested in because lichens are so under-recorded in, well, probably across the whole country, but there's some that we'd love to know more about. And bats as well. The Devon Bat Survey is always so popular, and it'd be great to know about bats, particularly in these key areas that we're working in, and all these notable trees as well. There's one last element that Rosie might just mention in a moment when I've finished, which is that she and her team have been setting up a few fixed point photography posts. So these, if you haven't seen these before, they are, well, this one's set up on a post, and this one looks like it's part of a fence or a gate. And they have just a little frame here, so you can place your phone against it and take a photo of the sort of treescape behind. And if everyone does that sort of regularly, and it's very easy, you take your photo and then you submit it and label it, and we'll be able to see how things change over years. And maybe there's, you know, with the ash trees that are in that landscape, we'll see how they change, and just generally how it changes. So hopefully we'll be able to accrue lots and lots of lovely photos from people who are just walking past, and build up a timeline of the treescapes. So I know I've sort of flown through some of these elements, but please remember that there's lots more information on the Saving Devon's Treescapes website. If you go to the website, it's this one here that will link you up with all the information on how to get involved with the citizen science. You're always very welcome to email me or Rosie if you have any questions or you really want to get involved. Please do get in touch. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll be able to give you a bit more information depending on which aspect you'd like to take part in. So if you have some questions or you think of any more now, please ask me and I will do my best to answer. So thank you very much, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Jess. That was very interesting. I'll just follow up with a couple that we are yet to develop, basically. So our citizen science programme is still a work in progress. We will hopefully soon have a citizen science assistant, which will enable us to put a lot more time and energy and support into it as well. And it means we'll be able to also look into some extra species. So Jess mentioned at the start the cell bunting, which is one we definitely want to look into, working alongside RSPB. And also harvest mice is another one that we will hopefully be able to do a few more surveys in, along with the Devon Mammal Group, because there's been some not backed up by evidence yet, so hopefully we can provide it with a bit more evidence, but they enjoying making nests in the bottom of tree tubes. And obviously we're distributing a lot of tree tubes with the project, and so we want to see what impact that is having basically on wildlife, and the harvest mice is a good example of that, so that we can study that over the years and see what the impact is. So there are some few questions coming in, so I will start working my way through them, if that's okay, Jess. And then if anyone else wants to add any, then please do. The first ones came in with the brown hairstreak butterfly, so we'll start with that in mind. So will warmer springs lead to dislocation between hatching and bud burst?
That is something that actually I was discussing with someone, I can't remember who, quite recently. There has been quite a lot in the news recently about that sort of mismatch of timings. So across nature, so many things, you know, one species depends on another, and the timing of when they come out. So I think birds and caterpillars are the sort of famous example of two things that need to be timed really well for the baby birds. So it might do. I think is the thing is that with climate change, there's so many things that we don't know, and so many different aspects and species that rely on sort of when things warm up and when buds come out. So we can only hope that they will keep matching. Thankfully, because they're on the same twig, so those eggs are on the actual twig and really close to the bud that they're going to eat. Hopefully they'll both be feeling the same warmth that will hopefully click on their development. But I'm not sure. I don't have the answer, and I'm sure there's a lot of research going into it.
Thank you. What is the largest number of eggs found in 100 meters square?
Oh, I'm trying to think. We had one surveyor who found 29, and I'm trying to remember the distance of hedgerow. That was just on one hedgerow, and I know that this comes from someone who surveyed in Sidmouth, where there weren't very many, but I don't know if we've had anyone who's sort of surveyed all the hedgerows in a square, because obviously there's lots of access issues. When we ask you to go out and survey, we're asking you to stick to public footpaths always, unless you expressly have the landowner's permission because you know them or you own the land. So I don't know. They can fly a little distance, they won't go miles and miles to find a suitable blackthorn hedge. So you need to have one of the lovely mast ash trees where they congregate, and it needs to be, sorry, I don't think I mentioned this in the original bit, but it needs to be quite a decent sized ash tree, because it needs to attract both the males and the females where they are. So there will be obviously a few females who will be laying around that site. So they're gregarious at the top of the ash tree, but when they come down to lay their eggs, I don't know, they tend to lay them singly, and I've heard various numbers, but I think the most trusted person I've asked has said there's about 100 eggs that a female will lay. So potentially there could be, you know, in 100 meters square. Oh, I'm not sure. Depends on the quality of the hedge, I think.
It's a challenge now. You'll have to go and find as many as you can.
I've got to go and survey everything in 100 meters square.
We've had someone say that regarding the timing of egg hatch and bud burst, they've already seen blackthorn buds bursting in the last couple of weeks. So it is beginning.
It is. Spring is starting.
Yeah, and then following on from that as well, are brown hairstreaks dependent solely on blackthorn? And what is the relationship between the brown hairstreaks and ash trees as opposed to other tree species?
So I think I might have covered that in the answer I just gave. So they flock to ash trees, the sort of larger mast ones, and they feed on the honeydew of aphids in there. So their first choice is ash trees. I think what we don't know is if the ash trees go, if there's going to be another species that will be sort of plan B for them to go to, that will do the same job of having the aphids and then being able to feed on the honeydew. So that is something that I think it might be a bit of time will tell. And as far as I know, they do only lay on blackthorn. That is, if you look at them when they sort of first come out as a hatched caterpillar, and as they grow they have the sort of green colour that helps them blend in with the new buds, and that is the caterpillar food plant. So they will preferably obviously lay their eggs on what the caterpillars want to eat, because when the caterpillars come out, obviously they're coming out from that tiny little egg, they're very small and they can't travel very far. So yes, as far as I know, it's blackthorn.
Great. Moving on to a question on lichens, and then Mike from Devon has his hand up, so we'll come to Mike in a minute as well. But with lichens, do either the fungus or the algae in any lichen exist as an organism in their own right, independent of the lichen?
So I think that they can. So the fungal aspect of the lichen can exist, but it doesn't form as a lichen. It wouldn't look anything like the lichen, because of course every lichen that we talk about is actually two organisms. So there's the fungus and then there's the bacterium, and both could theoretically exist separately, but they need each other to really live. That fungus needs the alga to be able to photosynthesize the food for it. So not only would it look very different, I doubt it would last very long. And likewise, the algae needs the protection of the fungus to survive as well.
Great. Mike, did you want to come in and ask a question? You put your hand down now. Was it an accidental hand?
It's been quiet.
No, it was an accidental hand. That's fine. So we have a couple of questions on the fixed point photography, which I can answer. So where are they, for a start? Is there a map online? All very good questions. So there are currently 25 across Devon, and there are 5 in each of our focus areas. So 5 in South Devon, 5 in Torbay, 5 in Exeter and Cranbrook, 5 in the Collie Valley, and 5 in Naroche. And we aim to do another 25 or 30 this year. And so once those ones are up, hopefully in the next couple of months, then we'll put a map online where all 50 or so of them will be. So you can, a bit like geocaching, you can go out and try and spot them all. So just to give you an example, we've got one along the river in Exeter here on Exwick, one in Topsham, Stoke Woods. I've got my list. In the Staple Hill car park in Naroche, in Offwell Woods and Buckley Woods, and Staple, got 2 in Staple, got 1 in Staple Hill, 1 in Staple Common, a couple in Cranbrook as well. So yeah, they are around and about. So there are definitely some that are more popular than others that we get a lot more photos of. From Stoke Woods is a very popular one, and I definitely get more photos after it's been a sunny weekend as well, so you can tell people have been out and about. But it's a lovely way to get involved, and the photos show us so much. So they're in different locations, so some are of general treescapes, some are showing ash trees in particular so that we can monitor the specific dieback of it. Some are in locations where ash trees are going to be felled, so we can see what might grow up in its place and what fills that space. And some are also where we've done some of our new plantings, so we can also see the growth of those trees over the years, which is going to be really fascinating. So by the end of the project, we'll have some wonderful, hopefully, images showing us the trees through time, which is great. So yeah, hopefully we'll have a map up in the next couple of months. Again, as soon as I have my citizen science assistant, that is one of their first jobs that they'll be doing. Okay, just moving on. Someone saying cell bunting surveying is a really great area to get involved with, which is good to hear. So hopefully we can get that up and running this summer as well. I did have a question, I've lost it now. What powers have you got to protect a hedge with brown hairstreak butterfly populations?
Brown hairstreaks they don't have sort of full protection, but they are a species that have been sort of flagged up as being notable and in decline. So they are something that sort of should be taken into account, particularly if there's any sort of development and things. But that's not going to necessarily stop anyone from, there's no powers to stop someone from sort of flailing a hedge, because lots of hedges do need flailing every now and again, and actually that can be quite good for the brown hairstreaks if it's done right. So as I said, they like to lay their eggs on the new branches. So trimming it occasionally can sort of stimulate the growth and give you the nice new and non-lichen covered twigs for them to lay their eggs on. If a blackthorn gets quite old, it gets really quite covered in lichen, and that's not good for laying eggs. So what the sort of standard recommendation is for trimming hedges is that if you own a number of hedges, you don't trim all of them in 1 year. You trim just a section, and then you do it on rotation, and that way there will always be some new growth for brown hair streaks, and likewise lots of berries and things also quite like to have more than 1 year's growth. So by trimming hedges on a rotation, which would be really good management, you can provide not just homes for brown hair streaks, but also for various other wildlife within those hedgerows who want to live and eat and survive.
Thank you. Someone has said the website says the bat survey is finished, which it has finished for 2021 and it's yet to start for 2022. So a lot of our different species we monitor at different parts of the year. So one great thing about our programme is there is always something to be monitoring, and our bats are focused around the spring and summertime. So we have yet to launch 2022.
Yes, there wouldn't be much on your detector if you did it at the moment, because bats are mostly asleep at the moment. They'll wake up soon.
Yeah, so as soon as we have our host centres agreed, then those details will be back online in spring for you, so you can start booking them out. It's very popular last spring and summer, so yeah, definitely keep an eye, but we'll also circulate an email if you're a Devon Wildlife Trust member once those host centres are open again. Someone said, do you check submitted photos to check the IDs? So there could be some feedback, because learning lichen ID can be very tricky.
Yes, it can be really, really difficult. The difficulty with photos is that of some of the species, it's quite easy to tell, like to confirm if it is from a photo. For others, it's a little bit more tricky, and it also, dare I say, depends on the quality of the photo. But we obviously go through and check all the records to make sure that we agree with what you think they are. Currently, because we're sort of waiting for an assistant to help to go through some of the photos that may be submitted on the app so far. But yes, if you are in any doubt, well, I can always put my email address in the chat as well. And if you're not sure one from another, do get in touch and I will try my best to let you know how it's going. But yes, it is really, really hard when you start, particularly because there are so many lichens. But that's why we've got these 12. Even if you focus on half a dozen of them and you sort of try and get your eye in for those and survey those. And we're not asking for every single clump of them on a tree either. So we just kind of want to know if they're present, and if you do find them, then walk along a bit and then look somewhere else, so we're not getting, otherwise you'll end up with 50 records for one tree, and those are just the ones that you can reach. On the recording form it does ask for diameter, and again for some of those that's not really necessary, but we've got species including the string of sausages lichen, which if anyone's seen that, it's a fantastic one that can get to about 1 meter long. So that's when knowing the size of the lichen is really, really useful as well. But yes, we're here to help. So if you are not sure about what species it is, please do get in touch.
Yeah, it's worth saying as well, we are in the process of organising some in-person lichen training events, because we do understand it can be very tricky to do it properly online, because photos don't always give you the full picture of what you're looking for. So Jess and I are just in the process of getting those dates and locations finalised, and once they are up, they'll be up on the Devon Wildlife Trust Eventbrite, so that you can book on, and so that we can really offer that one-to-one identification with you. And if we can't work it out, we can try and work it out together. And Jess can help you spot some of the more common ones as well in those sessions. So
yes. I'm not expert enough to know the 900 that we'll get, but I can help you out with this list and a few more.
But yeah, I will also do a follow-up email, and you'll have mine and Jess's email address. So if you want to send anything in to us, then please do. I think that's the end of the questions. I've had someone that says the National Ocean Survey already have the fixed point camera points on their coastline locations, which yes, they do. And I think I have a feeling, yeah, the coastal ones were probably one of the first to do that, so that they could monitor the coastal erosion, because I remember it very well in my geography GCSE learning all about it, and how citizen scientists can play such an important role in providing all of that data that otherwise projects wouldn't be able to do themselves. So yeah, it's just another example of how invaluable the data that you're able to submit is to our project. I will do a summary. I'll keep an eye on the chat box in case you have any, but I just want to say thank you very much for coming this evening. As Jess has said, everything you're able to submit or anytime you're able to give to the project is incredibly valuable to us. We're a small team and we've got a lot of the county to survey, basically. It's a very big county for not many of us. So we really appreciate anything you're able to do. Even when you do some surveys and you don't find anything at all, that's also incredibly useful to us, especially with the brown hairstreak butterfly. So don't think just because you've spent half an hour surveying and you didn't find anything that you shouldn't submit a record. Please do submit that record still. Whether you find something or not, it's all useful to us. And as the project goes on, we'll build a better and better database of all of these species and all of the records, which is just going to prove invaluable, because at the moment, although we know Ash Dieback is here and it's affecting our trees, we don't know the extent of the impact it's going to have with our biodiversity and species. So it's really vital that we're able to gather that data so that we can monitor it over the years and see then how best we can support them as well. Someone's just asked, when will the notable trees be open? It is open now. However, it's far easier to identify the trees in spring. So it's something that we, again, will be putting on some in-person kind of tree walks and talks and identifying in spring, so that we can, yeah, go with you basically and help look for the most common species so that you know what you're looking for. If you are good at winter twig ID, then please do record now. It's not a specialty of mine. I really struggle in winter, but I'm much better when the leaves are on the trees. Again, I will circulate the link to the web-based app where you can record everything. And yeah, we really appreciate everything you can do. Was there anything you wanted to add, Jess?
No, just to reiterate that, yeah, anything you can get involved with. Some of these really don't take very much time, and they really do add to the fantastic data set that we're building up. So please do get involved, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, and I will warn you, the brown hairstreak butterfly in particular gets quite addictive once you're sucked in. You saw a picture of me finding my first egg. I think it took me about 2 hours to find my first egg, but I was determined to find one. And then once you find one, you just want to find more. So it's a wonderful way to spend your time. And it's really, yeah, interesting and fascinating finding these tiny, tiny eggs, knowing that they're going to grow up to be these wonderful butterflies as well. I think that's the end of the questions, and we are just coming up to 8 o'clock as well. So we'll leave it there. This is a recording, so we will put it up on the Devon Wildlife Trust YouTube channel as well. And I'll also link you to our brown hairstreak butterfly and lichen training sessions on there as well. So if you want to find out more detail about either of those species in particular, then you can look back at those events. Basically, I'm going to be sending you lots of links, and also I'll be letting you know when all of our in-person trainings are happening as well. So thank you very much again for coming this evening. It's been lovely speaking with you. Thank you so much to Jess from DBRC for sharing all her knowledge with us. And hopefully we'll see you at some in-person events soon, and hopefully we'll see your records piling in soon through our app as well. So have a good evening.